Politics Done Right comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to Northeast Texas, Southeast Texas, Northwest Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana, and to every nook and cranny receiving the signals from our high-powered 100,000-watt transmitter, sending signals to the Howard box, formerly known as radios. Anyway, folks, we're going to have a great show for you today. We have a lot to talk about. I hope to get your calls at 713-526-5738 early so that we don't have to be rushing our dear brothers and sisters. But without any further ado, let's move it on to the geniuses in the studio.
Well, good morning, Egberto. I'm not so sure your tin cans and string are holding up so well. You sound a little strange on this side.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, just a little garbled here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Monday morning, so the weekend gremlins have not left the building yet, is basically what I would say. Things are well. We did the remote yesterday with Clint Broussard over under the volcano. Had a fun time. Lots of folks showed up and got to meet some of our listeners, and they got to meet Clint, which is always an honor. So we had a really good time. We got another one coming up here on Thursday. R&R will be at Christian's Tailgate, broadcasting live. We're going to do it from noon until 3, so they get an extra hour, which is kind of cool. We figure it's the Texas Radio Hall of Fame gathering, where a lot of the radio superstars will be. It will be interesting for everyone to come out and enjoy some R&R. These guys are really, they're more funny in person than they are on the radio. Yeah, if you can imagine that, Ronnie's about as goofy as he can be, and Tom is kind of like the straight guy, but he keeps Ronnie in check. It's a Christian's Tailgate on Thursday, noon until 3. We're going to be spinning some fabulous tunes out there. Some of the folks from the Texas Radio Hall of Fame will be there. Meet and greet and have a good time. Jack, what you got, man?
Good morning. Good morning. I got something here.
You are moving into the modern age here. I see that you're going to read something from your phone.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of Jack. See, Jack came in technically unaware.
Neophyte.
And now Jack is reading stuff off of his phone.
I like that.
Something here. And we've introduced him to a whole new world of technology, and he's staying on the good side. So what you got, man?
All right. I read your post with Pastor Ruby.
Yes.
I believe that was his name. And it just struck to my sense of what the Christ being is. And for me, the Christ being is people more like Edward Snowden, Daniel Ellsberg, Julian Assange. These people risk their lives and their well-being to bring you truth. And I think that's more or less my vision of Christ. The ministry of Christ is about activism, not forgiveness. It's about getting and being involved actively in your cause or calling, excuse me. Even though the call goes out for you to be crucified, you stand your ground and realize the power you have that they will crucify you for. Speak truth to power till power submits.
Wow. Christ was an activist. Yep. He just said, none of this garbage.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about these people who are holier than thou, look down upon the activists saying, well, you should be more Christ-like. They are being Christ-like, clown. So there you go. My 2 cents.
It is amazing. I hope my voice is a little bit better now.
Yeah, you seem to be cleared up a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you do extra for that effect?
No, what happened is, we have different mic systems, and you can select whichever one you want to go. And the wrong mic system, I guess, was on. I looked at it and I said,
Eek.
let's go with that one.
That's much better. Yeah, you're coming in pretty clear now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sorry about that for the listening audience. With all these different contraptions and magical ways that we get to you, every now and then we run into problems. But I am going to piggyback off of what activism is, even though that's not what I wrote my blog to talk about today. But I just love what Jack has to say, like he always changes the damn subject. So let's do it again. Look. Um, the people, Jack is absolutely right. Christ was an activist, right? And whether you're religious or not, whether you're a Christian or not, I used to be a Christian. I'm now a humanist. I don't know what's the big difference between the two, other than one is not our. I mean, well, I do know what the difference is, but I left organized religion several decades ago when I was at the University of Texas, and we did a whole lot of activism. And at that point in time, South Africa was still an apartheid state, and University of Texas had a whole lot of investments in companies in South Africa. And we had an organization called the South African Liberation Action Committee. And one of our goals were to make sure that different universities at the time divest their monies from places like South Africa, because again, you are propping up a government that is not a fair government, etc. That I would say is pretty darn Christ-like. And I remember the name of the church, a very conservative church that I was in Austin. I remember I came to the United States a Christian, having been in a Baptist church, first a Catholic church in Panama, then my mother moved us into a Baptist church. I was a choir in the choir. I even preached a few times, and that's another story. But I mean, the interesting thing about it is at UT. I joined all these different organizations, and this specific one, we're marching on campus to get the university to divest. I remember us on the West Mall, and we're telling you got to get out of the of South Africa, etc. And we wanted more power, so all of us were saying we're going to bring all the other organizations that we're participants in to go ahead and do this. So I go to my church. It's called the Maranatha Christian Center. Never forget it. Maranatha Christian Center, trying to live by the word of the Lord and the Bible. And I went to the pastor and I said, "Hey, I'd like our church to be a part of this civic activity, this political activity, this march." And he looked at me and he said, "No, we can't do that, Egberto." I'm like, "Well, I need us to do it. I need us. I was a, I was a radical back then, and I didn't have a whole lot of backstops. In other words, whereas I can control myself now, then I wanted the world changed yesterday." And I looked said, "Hey, we got to march," and he said, "No." And then he took me to the back and he said, "Let's have a chat." And then we started talking about the things in the Bible and all that kind of stuff. And I'm with him so far. And then I'm like, "Yeah, but that is the tantamount to slavery." And I'm going off with the pastor. And by the way, this is a pretty white church. We're in Austin at the University of Texas now. And the pastor looks at me and he said, "Egberto, let me just say this. Do you realize that Jesus never spoke out against slavery? In fact, Jesus said, 'Honor thy masters,' or something to that effect he gave me, and he took me to the passage. And then I'm like, 'So you're telling me nowhere in the Bible says that slavery is wrong?' And I'm going off, and he says, 'No.' So I read the whole darn New Testament, man, and the pastor was right. So I left the church. And I became a humanist because I believe solely in human values, equity for every single person, irrespective of who they are, etc. Now, the thing about it though is, while Christ didn't talk out against slavery, you know, what he did speak about, I mean, you remember when he would say, I mean, I always call Jesus the best politician out there. I think it's him who said, "Give unto the Lord what is the Lord, and what give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, what is the Lord unto the Lord. In other words, he found a way to stay out of politics, I guess long enough to live to the 30-something years he lived to, and then got killed, well, I guess when he, kind of got a little bit too deep. But in effect, I'm saying, when Jack talks about living Christ-like, I left the church because the church was saying what Christ didn't say specifically, but it wasn't talking about what Christ did. In other words, what Christ believed in. When Christ took 2 loaves of bread and fed the entire thousands upon thousands of people. When Christ talks about, I have come to your house several times and you've rejected me. But only when you thought I was Christ, you didn't. And what I'm going to do now is play the piece that I did for the Reverend out of Springfield, Ohio, who reminds evangelicals what really is Christ-like, and remind them that all the things that they currently believe in is more tantamount to evil than it is to Christ. So hear this and then we'll move on. Pastor Carl Ruby in Springfield, Illinois, he has a message that evangelicals should listen to. Because I tell you what Donald Trump and J.D. Vance did to the Springfield, Ohio community, create a lot of dissension, create a lot of friction, create a lot of hate, force the city to spend money that it didn't have, where it's already trying to cope with expenses of having a whole lot of issues with immigrants and otherwise. What Donald Trump and them did, it was horrendous, and this pastor gave it another dimension. I want you to listen to our Reverend Carl Ruby, and then we'll take it on the other side.
One thing I want to say, I've had a lot of media coverage this week, and I've gotten tons of emails from people I don't know from all over the world, and almost every single one has been positive. And here in the committee of Springfield, there are pastors who've never worked together before, who are arm in arm, saying together, God loves immigrants, and he commands that we do. I mean, immigrants are so important. They made the 10 Commandments. Moses talked about our need to welcome immigrants. King David talked about it. Most of the prophets talked about it. But most of all, Jesus talked about it. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, if you're truly a righteous person, you will greet strangers. And the word for strangers is the word for immigrant or foreigner. And then he went on to say, he said, if you only greet people who are just like you, what good is that? Even pagan people do that. So to me, you can't claim to be loyal to Jesus if you're not willing to show love to immigrants. That's so central to the Christian message. And I think this is a time for the whole church really to get back to what it means to be a true Christian. And that is a person who loves their neighbors, we love ourselves, and treats others as we would like to be treated.
Reverend Ruby nails it. All of these people, including the evangelicals that are now beholden to Trump, they have allowed Trump, these pastors that should be taking care of their flock, they have allowed Trump to so distort their morality that they have forgotten the good book that they follow, as the pastor indicated, to do all that is wrong. If that isn't evil, please tell me what is. If that isn't evil, please, por favor, dime lo que es. Tell me what it is. So those of you evangelicals who are making immigration an issue, there are several things, especially if you are here in the United States based on your ancestors coming here, especially so. There's something that I state over and over and over again. The vast majority of these people coming over here, they are coming over here for a job. They're coming over here to make things better for themselves. They're not coming over here to take away anything from anyone. But you know, the founders of our country, the people that we revere, in order to take this country, it is essential that we understand. Look, I am not trying to live back in the past. I am not trying to do, to do what is really the impossible. But remember, what they wanted, they came here and they took, and not in the most pleasant of forms. So we should have some humility. We should all have some humility when it comes to immigration. But it even goes further with the change in the way the world is, with the change in temperature, and for the damage the industrialized nations, the part that they've played in the change of our environment, etc. We should be a bit more humble, because much of the damage that many of us have done, look, we have done a lot of good as well, don't get me wrong, but much of the damage that we've done, others are paying the price for, and we owe morally, we owe much to the rest of the world. All right, folks, telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Extension number 2 to get on air, 713-526-5738. And by the way, you know we're not in fund drive, but no matter when, you can always go to kpft.org and support the station. Make sure we stay here, as well as going to call in 713-526-5738 and hit extension number 1. But please call early. Don't wait until the end of the show. But we have our first caller, Brother Jacobe, Jacob E. Come on in, my brother. Talk to me.
That Bible that you quote is our history book, the lost sheep. When you bringing up Jesus, the evangelists, they will close that book. They put these fake pictures in there of him and these white people floating in clouds. But it describes him as a man with hair of wool. Feet look like it was burnt in brass with red. It described a black man, so-called black man to the T. If they look at the pictures, they don't even read the Bible. They think he's the stringy hair painting by Caesar that his son did as an artist. They think that's Jesus. The people walk around with the Jesus pieces and the long stringy hair white dude. But if they look at the book, if they read what the description says of him, they'll know who he is, and they will drop that book and run the other way. And he also told them, do not go the way of the Gentile, but go to the lost sheep of the Israel. Who are the lost sheep? Us and Americans spread it across the country. Creator said, I'll be shattered to the four corners of the earth. So I don't think you want to open that book, because that book is not a Christian book nowhere. From the top, from the beginning to the end, it's Abram's seed that was going to the land. I just posted it yesterday, and they was going to serve our nation for 400 years, and we did it from 1619 to 2019. In 2019, the world got hit with a plague. And you know what that is? That is when everybody had to go get the virus. They had to go get the shot, and the world ain't been the same since. But let's go to like with the Haitians. Now, some have them as a lost tribe. It's 12 tribes, so everybody ain't Jews. Judah is one of the tribes, but you got Dan, Levi, Reuben, Issachar, and they said that some believe that the Haitians are the Levites. That's the priesthood, the Levitical priesthood. But I have nothing against them. But the thing is, when they come over they got Haiti, right? Which these are my disciples. I say, what's up to them? They cool. Now, but what it is for those of Judah in Ohio, in Akron, Cleveland, Toledo, why would they have to go way over there when Judah right there? And Judah needs some work too. They ain't got to go way over there. Judah will work in a factory. They ain't picking no grapes. So don't say they can't want anybody to do that job. Anybody in America would do that job. So that's what it is.
Jacob, I must admit that half of what you say, I don't really understand. Maybe I'm not capable of knowing all that history. Now, when it comes to the representation,
I can talk real slow. Let me talk real.
Oh, no. It's okay. It's okay, brother. It's okay. But let me just say this. I get it. I was making a joke. But here's the thing. when it comes to what Jesus looks like, yes, Jesus is not the blue-eyed blonde on a cross that you see in most churches. People sort of make Jesus a representation of who they are. In Panama, in a
They
place called Port,
deceive the world with the picture. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
be
Let me
quiet.
finish. In Panama, we have on the Atlantic coast, we have a picture. We have a very historic church on the Atlantic coast in Panama, in a city in Colon called Portobello. And in Portobello, what Jesus Christ looks like me. Okay, so I mean, it's not something that people don't do all over the world. What Jesus Christ looks like. The truth of the matter is probably what Middle Eastern or something like that. But I don't think that
No,
is the
no, no, no,
important
no, no,
thing.
no, 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 no,
Well,
no,
well,
no. Be quiet.
Jacob,
Okay.
let
Let
me
me be
finish,
quiet.
please,
All right.
please,
Let me be
please.
quiet. Okay.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. I do appreciate you. Um, the truth of the matter is, as far as physicalities, we can assume. We don't know absolutely. And one of the things that I won't have an argument or discussion, well, I mean, not you can speak about it. It's a free country, but I'm not going to make the physical appearance of that particular human being be something that distracts me. The only reason for what Jesus looks like to be distractive to us, in my humble opinion, is when people try to make it that the physical attributes of Jesus makes the physical attributes of others less worthy, and that should never be the case. So other than that, there's no reason to be what Jesus looks like. Go ahead, my brother, and then I got to go to
Well,
Johnny. Well, go ahead,
well,
brother.
okay. Well, it's written. You ain't gotta physically do nothing. It's in plain. You're educated man, highly educated, right? Just
Oh
read
no, no,
it.
I look. I agreed with you, Jacob, that I
Okay, all right. Okay, this is the last point right here. You talk. This is the last point right here. He
yeah.
told his disciples, "Do not go the way of the Gentile, but go to the lost sheep of Israel, my people." And that's what. And we are His people. We got scattered to the four corners of the earth. We're not just so black that they gave us as a nation. My people did not speak English. They spoke Hebrew, and they got them on the books with their names in Hebrew. And that's it. The imposters
Okay.
over there, they're not of Jerusalem. That's it. Shalom.
Jacob, thank you very much for your word. Before I go to Johnny, I just want to say something because I always thought that one of the reasons I also left organized religion is that we get, in my opinion, and I say this respectfully to Brother Johnny, we get hung up onto a whole lot of things, Gentiles, Jews, all this sort of thing, right? I remember one time asking a pastor, I said, if one reads the Bible literally, aren't you saying that prejudice and that sort of stuff emanated from it? After all, how can the God who made us all come out and say Jews are my chosen ones? So and not all of us are the chosen ones. So I mean, again, I'm talking literally. Literally, I always ask my pastor and that sort of stuff when I came in. And I remember the first time I did a little preaching as a youth pastor. This was a short time. It was youth weekend. I did the preaching. I made sure to skip that part and made it that everybody was the chosen one. But hey, that's my thing. Let's go to Brother Johnny.
With all due respect to Brother Johnny, don't get me involved in this. I came in late. I have no clue. I have no clue what that brother was talking about. So I'd have to go back and listen to the archive for later if I've got time. Anyway, so here's how this is how I like to interact with some of my Republican-leaning neighbors. Sometimes I will approach Jesus and organized religion in this way. I say, Jesus was the original socialist hippie. And that shuts them up right away because they don't know how to respond to that. And then
unfortunately for them, that's a true statement and verifiable by the Bible. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that shuts them up right away. And then I proceed to explain to them what I mean by that. And I lay it all out for them. And I use myself as an example. And in terms of organized religion, dovetailing what you just said, with organized religion, if we had more people like the Reverend Dr. Barber, that would be, then I could support organized religion. But unfortunately, the human nature being what it is, when we organize people in bunches, that's when you have problems, whether it's organized contact sport, organized religion, and guess what? Politics in Washington, D.C. There's this series of public service announcements, excellent public service announcements on Free Speech TV, in a series run by Inequality Media with Robert Reich.
Robert Reich. Yeah, he's great.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. So, and he described in one of his messages, he describes how the size of government, we need to increase the House literally and add more seats, and he explains the proportionality to the population, and it makes sense what he's saying. But then I'm thinking, we still have to solve this idea of human nature. We have to figure that out. Otherwise, it's not going to represent anybody except the oligarchy. It's the oligarchs who are the problem. And one last comment to dovetail with that. This morning on BBC, I'm sad to say, and I respect the BBC, but even they have fallen every once in a while. They were doing the ridiculous thing that NPR does. Donald Trump says that Kamala Harris is a communist, right? He's called it out on more than one occasion, a communist. And what else did he call her? Something else, but communist. So what do? They entertain it like it's a legitimate question. Unbelievable. And that's all I'll say about that. Why don't they ask this? Instead of asking if Kamala Harris is actually a communist, why don't they ask a question about Donald Trump? Is he a college graduate?
You brought up a subject that I had on one of the discussion points for this morning, and that is, the double standard that you get with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and even Biden and Donald Trump, is amazing. And it all has to do with the policies that these people are likely to support, right? The truth of the matter is, many of these folks won't mind if Donald Trump wins again. And they are actually giving people permission structure to vote for this person that is by no means qualified, this poor person that's a danger to society, this person that, goes ahead and malign women. He's been he's been convicted of not convicted, but found liable for sexually assaulting a woman. I mean, it is just somebody that doesn't belong in the office, and they're trying to create a permission structure. Within the lectest thing, and if you take a look at like the Washington Post, right? One of the latest, let me give you the title of an article that I was reading this morning, actually last night. It said, Kamala has officially moved ahead in the polls. And the NBC polls yesterday, she came out as 5 points ahead of Trump, 49-44. And they went ahead and, go ahead. Did you want to come in?
No, I was laughing because when they report like that, they're self-defeating. They act just like the leadership of the Democratic Party. They settled for so little, so low, and they ignore people like me who could actually put them over the finish line. And it's to their own detriment. They think I'm the only one that's going to suffer. I think I know the thing coming.
Yeah, but let me say the point that I'm trying to make here. Kamala Harris has moved. This is the title of the article. Kamala Harris has moved the polls, but she has more work to do. And then the subtitle is, in the first 2 months of her campaign, Harris has met or exceeded expectation. So they give her the kudos that she deserves. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected the competence that they got from her, not only in herself appearance on the stage, but also in the back end running the campaign, right? But there had to be a but. But she has to do more to pull ahead of Donald Trump in the battleground states. And they're not admitting that one of the reasons she has to do more in these battleground states, and everywhere, to put it bluntly, is because of their reporting. And Johnny just brought up a point from the BBC. The incompetent, unintellectual Donald Trump goes out and he says, Kamala is a communist. He couldn't even define communist if you asked him. If you ask him to read the definition, he probably couldn't do it appropriately. But now the mainstream media is taken up with addressing a comment made by somebody who has no intellect behind him. And thus, then, people that are, Republicans or independents or otherwise, they start to get, I wonder if we need to examine that. So there's a double standard here that's being asked. She needs to do more. She's proven competent. I mean, this woman did appear out of nowhere. That the media ignored her doesn't mean that she didn't come from. So I mean, hell, the woman's pedigree, the woman's different jobs legally and otherwise proves her point. I mean, after all, she has experience both flipping burgers as well as convicted kingpins, as well as being a law and order person, as well as being somebody who convicts rapists, people who convict criminal breakers like Donald. I mean, she has, as far as politically speaking, she has done all that is necessary. As far as humanely, she has done what's required. And as far as socially, I want to ask folks something. For women out there, which woman out there who is a good friend, who's a friend with the ex-wife of the man she's married to, and this ex-wife constantly comes out and defends the new wife? I mean, it takes a special, somebody has to be a special kind of person for that. And I know women out there and men married to men have to say the same thing. Wow, how comes Enahav's ex-wife is so into Kamala? How comes his two kids are so into their stepmom? And then compare that family structure with Trump's family structure. A man with several baby mamas, a guy who doesn't have a good love relationship with all this. I mean, it is amazing. I mean, it is similar to what we had with Barack Obama, right? He lived immaculate life, one wife, two kids, does the family man stuff, does all that's necessary, and somehow you want to compare Barack Obama or Kamala Harris or Brother Biden with Trump on a moral basis, on an intellectual basis? The only reason corporate America loves Trump is because of his ability and his lack of morals. They can simply tell him what to do, and he doesn't really care if he can make a buck out of it. And if folks can't see that, and can't see that it hurts the middle class, it hurts the poor, it hurts the working class. I'm coming to you, Harry, but I want to tie this into another subject that I want to bring up, and that is the Teamsters Union, the head of the Teamsters Union, not backing anybody, right? I mean, if backing Trump would have been like a disaster, right? But claiming that the rank and file for some reason was more Trump-based, and not as a leader explaining that Trump made it not possible for you to get your retirements that now was reinstituted by the Biden administration. Your pension is now held by the Biden administration. That overtime pay you can now get that the Trump administration by decree gave it to your employer. And you're going to tell me that union is not going to endorse the candidate that is best for the working class? When I tell you, there's something wrong, not only with the mainstream media, but also with something called males. I'm going to tell you something. I can't wait to be led by a woman. And I'm not only talking about at the presidential level, I'm talking about all levels. I think many of these guys have lost their authority to lead. Come on in, Harry. Okay, I think Harry will be in as soon as we can push Harry's button. They may be taking a call right now. There you go. You're on now, Harry.
Good morning. Good morning, Magic Jack. Good morning, Captain Reynolds Rap, and good morning, Professor Eberto Willis. I'll start off with when you were talking with Jacob with Christ, what he looked like, and then I'll talk about Kamala Harris and what she needs to do. With Christ, I remember I mentioned this to Steve Hunter a long time ago. He didn't know who this guy was, but I'll start with Rashida Tlaib, because Christ was born in that part of the world. Rashida Tlaib will say, "Hey, Christ looked like my people." Or have you heard of a guy named? He was a decathlon. His name was Gilad Yankowitz, and he did a show called Bodies in Motion in the 80s and 90s. Have you ever heard of him, Roberto?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, well, you can research him. He's an exercise guy. Was a decathlon. He was in the He actually was in the L.A. Olympics. When I remember when you were talking about Mary Lou Retton last year, he was in those Olympics. But Christ looked something like him. He had olive skin and woolly hair. If you Google Gilad Yankowitz, Jesus Christ looks something like that, or Yeshua, or is what his real name is. But now I'll go on to Kamala Harris. When I was listening to Arnie Arnesen this morning, I like what Bill Curry was saying, the guy who used to work with one of her guests that he used to work for Bill Clinton. He was saying that he was matter of fact about it. When Arnie Arnesen laid out, when she laid out the polls, why are the polls so close and all that? And Bill Curry just said, well, because Kamala Harris has not explained herself enough on her policy on how to do it. If she would talk more about maybe getting student loans for young people to pay, to cut the student loans, talk more about that, talk more about livable wages, because they talked about Bernie Sanders when he first was talking about that back in 2016, and they were calling him Crazy Bernie. And it was
Come to your point. Come to your point, my brother Harry. Come to your point. I got 2 more calls, my brother.
Okay, the point is. Okay, well, yeah, it's just the point is, Curry was saying she could close the deal because he just said, look, you are not supposed to be tied with a crazy fascist racist whose ideas are worse. Kamala, if you would explain yourself more on your policy, you should be ahead of this crazy fascist racist. And he's right. Bill Curry's right about that.
Let me push back. Let me push back on Bill Curry, because I think he's wrong, and let me tell you why I think he's wrong. Here's what they want her to do. And here's what they want her to do. And they are not asking this of Donald Trump. Donald Trump says, I'm going to give you a tax cut. I'm going to do all these things. And they don't say, okay, Donald Trump, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to not, based on how our economic system works, how are you not going to inflate the economy if you're not going to tax and you're going to give these people back? What are you going to cut? Social Security, the places you're going to have to cut to do that. Medicare is the places you have to cut. They don't ask that of Donald Trump. He says tax cuts and it's okay. Now she says, I am going to give you a credit. I am going to, and remember, a credit is just taxes not paid. I am going to give you a credit for $50,000 for business. I'm going to give childcare for $6,000 for the first year, $3,600 until $63,000 until she gives all what she's going to do, and then she tells you how she's going to pay for it. She's going to pay for it by increasing capital gain taxes and these other taxes on wealthy people. She gave the full Monty. For those people who says that she is not, She's not explaining what she's going to do. She don't only tell you what she's going to do, she tells you how she's going to pay for it. And all of those people out there that are like, she needs to say more, she needs to say more, they're full of it. They're not asking the same of Donald Trump. And they did the same thing to Brother Biden. They did the same. Brother Biden has been an exceptional president. Look, I am not a Biden, I am a Bernie guy. And I'm telling you, Biden did exactly the things that Bernie would have done. When you look at Biden has Lena Khan, who is one of the most powerful 30-something-year-olds who have the corporations on their knees because they can't rip the people off. I am sorry. It is time for us to boldly say that Biden actually reigned like he lived. In other words, he came out of Scranton, Pennsylvania, I think it was, and while he doesn't say it, his policies have been that of the working class. Because of his age, I don't think he could carry the mantra. But Kamala Harris moderated a bit of what of the wordiology from Biden. But I'm sorry, anybody in the working class that doesn't see that, it's not because they're dumb or anything. It's because we have a media that's not doing its job, and it has people like Brett Stevens and others going out there and telling a narrative that they're not asking of the right. Thank you very much, Harry, for giving me the opportunity to say that, brother. I got to go to Moses. Let's go to Moses. Come on in, Moses.
Good morning. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias, corazón.
Buenos dias, mijito. Okay. Let me say this, and this time I have about 4 points. Number one, Christians, beware, beware. We live in the days of the Bible in your hand. Jesus himself directed, go back to the prophets. The covenant given to Moses specifically commands, you shall not oppress the stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, because you too were strangers in the land of Egypt. Study the book of Obadiah, and you will see clearly. And then study the book of Daniel, and you will see the situation we are in. And the last thing, beware of the false prophets in your churches. Beware of Mr. Trump with a Bible in your hand, trash talking God. And that's all I've got to say. Christians, beware.
Thank you very much, Moses.
For you, he's going to ask you, what did you do to stand up for my word in the time that you saw the danger? Thank you.
Thank you, Moses. All right, let's go to Brother David.
Oh, thanks. Hey, Berto. You know, you've done some nice rundowns on, the problem of corporate media and why we're not getting a good, accurate picture. One of the bigger scams that's happened about 20 years ago was the corporate mergers in media, in radio, media in total. And just like you were talking about how the mass media hasn't informed us. Well, they probably fired 100,000 reporters, news staff in all of the different radio stations, just that iHeart or Clear Channel bought. And 100,000 voices were silenced and replaced with Rush Limbaugh and, corporate chain liars. So one of the big scams that they've been pushing since then is that government must be run like a business.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
That's a lie. Government needs to be run like a nonprofit. If you're going to run your sewer department, you don't want somebody trying to take a profit on it. And you don't want it run on the cheap because you're going to have epidemics. And you don't want the library to run like a profit. You don't want to start naming the departments. The road tar alone would bankrupt any major city if it was run like a business. It's got to be run like a nonprofit. And so a guy like Ronald Reagan, or, well, whether it's Ronald Reagan or George Bush or who's this jackass, Trump, those guys, not only are they bad businessmen, but they don't know how to run government like a business because it's not supposed to be run like it. So I was just going to leave that as the major theme, that government has to be run as a nonprofit, and for Trump to pretend that he knows how to run it, he's a liar.
Look, let me address much of what you said. Yeah, the mainstream media have always had its soul sold, but I mean, we used to have a point in time when NPR and the BBC and all these guys were reliable in that they had the authority to go out there and do things. But as they got less funding and also had to get funding from the external places, a lot of that changed, and it really tempered what one can say, and that applies to a whole lot of different, even things that we call community radios and community. A lot of places restrict much of what because they have to temper themselves with with the corporatocracy, those people who are donating. One of the good things here at KPFT is we have not yet, and I've said yet because we have to, you guys are the owners of KPFT. You all have to make sure that we don't have to fall into that domain. Why I always tell you guys, if the people give, if the people are the ones that creates this radio, that makes this radio happen, then there's nothing that we can always tell you the truth. We don't have to temper our tongues or hide, and that's who we still are. I mean, there are certain things I don't say because I don't want to. I'm not in the mood to get into certain kinds of fights, but for the most part, we can say things the way they are. Now, one other thing that you mentioned about the corporations and how it's run here, David, is that we have to make sure that people not only know that, let's say, the corporate media, you have to take what you get with a grain of salt. We have to be able to direct them to reliable sources of information. And I'm going to toot my horn a little bit here because, I make sure that everything that I talk to my audience about, it's verified. Every now and then I screw up. Everybody's human. But if I screw up, I also make sure to tell folks that I did screw up. But the other thing is that you make sure, and by the way, you can look up my rating as well. Independent organizations determine if a particular news or opinion entity is highly factual, not factual, etc. And I'm rated highly factual everywhere else. But anyway, the fact of the matter is this: the media has changed, and those of us who still have the opportunity to do so, must inform people where they can get reliable information. And you'll hear Johnny come on here, you come on here and you make your point as well. And others say, hey, by the way, you can get this is a good source here, this is a good source, this is a good source. It's no longer coming from the top directing news. News is going to come in a network fashion where we all have to find where the truth is. All right. Anyway, anything else, David, before I run to Donald?
Well, yeah, I guess I could just wrap up with when the corporate media got bought up, Rupert Murdoch tricked America into having the news department make a profit. Well, that flies in the face of journalistic ethics when journalists are supposed to look for the truth, not listen to the advertisers. And the advertisers, once the advertisers were forced into the news department, that guaranteed that we were going to get pack of lies. So if you hear, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Well, just the news department is never supposed to make a profit. It's not supposed to pay for itself. It used to be a public service. The FCC, when radio stations got started 100 years ago, it was seen as a public service, and radio stations were leasing the frequency from the people. We, the people, own the frequencies, and the radio stations and TV borrow them. They lease them from the people of the United States.
David, I got to go. David, you're right. But I think I want to cut you on that point because a lot of people don't know it. You're absolutely right. The airwaves belong to us, and we lease it to radio to use it. You're absolutely right. And the other thing that you brought up that is important is that government should not be run as a business at all. Government is not a business. Running government like a business is one of the worst things to do. Howard also made clear about the Telecom 1996. I think he got rid of the rule where equal sides had equal access to commentary, etc. But anyhow, thank you, David. I need to go to Donald.
Sure. Take care.
Donald, come on in real quick, my brother.
Good morning, Alberto. I got to ding you for a second. Your brother-in-law has very good. He's got a very good tonal quality in his voice. He needs to do ebooks because his voice is right there, and I'm glad to see that he's recovering. And you read
the article?
Yeah. Well, no. Anyways, I don't listen to your stuff. But okay, if you look like Jesus, I ain't never seen no Jesus with a headset and bald hair and glasses. I don't think Jesus needs no glasses, but I think you're right on the color because I'm going to sit outside when I get to heaven and on my smoke breaks when I'm taking a break from the sewer treatment facility. I'm going to sit there and watch the faces of them people when they see St. Peter or Paul or all the other ones. Be like, you ain't know it. Wait till you see Jesus and God on the other side. You're going to be running for the gate.
You see why? Hey. All right, thank you, brother. You are so funny. That's my brother Donald, man. That's my brother Donald, my MAGA brother Donald. All right, let's get into Brian. Come on in, Brian.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. There was a reporter for NPR said NPR is going too far left wing, and he was pretty much fired for his position. Did you report on that? Did you say
I didn't know about
that?
it. No, I didn't know about it. But I mean, thank you for telling me. Okay.
Yeah, he was pretty much fired for saying we are too far left. We're not giving out the proper news.
Wait, isn't that a Panamanian? Wait. I think that was a Panamanian guy that said that, right? He's I think
you didn't know.
Yeah, I think I do.
Didn't know about
I think I remember this story. I think I remember the story. And then he went and worked for Fox News, right?
No, he did not. No,
okay,
he did not.
I thought you were talking about Juan Williams because Juan Williams is from Colón, the same city that I'm from, and he had some issues with NPR. But anyway, continue, brother.
No, 93% of the news being reported on Trump is negative. 93%.
Why is that? Why is that?
Is that? Okay, because it's not true. It's one-sided. If 93% is
so let me
negative.
stop you. Let me stop you there and ask you a few questions, if I can. Did Trump talk about grabbing on women's parts? Yes or no?
How about Clinton? What did Clinton do?
Okay. And we impeached him for something that we shouldn't, but we actually gave him. But I mean, if you what the problem is, Brian, is if you add up all the bad things that Trump does, okay, it pales in comparison with any other presidential candidate or president, and that's why the stories are negative on Trump, because the guy's an evil person. I mean, what do you want us to do? Make up good stories about this guy? There aren't any. Give me a good story about Trump where he does something positive for somebody. Give me one story about Trump.
Okay, here's one story. It's called Warp Speed for the COVID vaccine.
That was a business transaction. Warp Speed wasn't created by Trump, first of all, and secondly, it was a business transaction.
That is to help the people.
False.
Was it not?
False.
Yes or no? It was up to the state. It was up to the state to regulate
Sir,
what was going on.
Warp
You
speed
still- you
wasn't
still bring it
first.
up how bad
Warp,
it was.
warp
You-
speed. Warp speed. Do you want to hear it? Go ahead. I got to go,
Yeah,
but
go
go
ahead.
aid. No, you finish because I got to leave you after this. So
I'm
give a
waiting.
quick
Answer
point.
the question.
Okay,
Answer
I
the
got to go,
question.
Brian. I'll answer it in my response in my after Howard comes back. I'll talk to you later, Brian. Howard, studio, come on in.
Okay, that was the Telecom Act of 1996, which caused all the media merging and combinations. What they did is they lifted the ownership caps. At one particular time, there was a law that said you could not own any more than 7 radio stations.
Right.
And then they increased it to 10 in the different markets. You couldn't own another station in the same market because it cut competition, and it does.
Right.
The fairness doctrine was the one you were talking about that lifted the requirement
That's
for
right.
radio
Right.
stations, the
Right.
fairness doctrine. So I know a little bit about that as I worked for iHeart for about 21 years. So I know how they operate. And other than
So
that, Jack,
let
you
me
got
correct.
anything?
I want to make
Yeah, go
folks
ahead.
know the correction. Go ahead. Howard just corrected me on a very important thing. When I spoke about equal access to the airwaves, that was the fairness doctrine, not the 1996 Telecom Act. I thought it was in the 1996 Telecom Act, but I think it came before the 1996 Telecom Act with Ronald Reagan. You're correct.
Well, they had a sunset on that one. So
Right.
they let it expire. It was not a
Right.
law, it was a rule with a
Right.
sunset, and they let it sunset. So
There you
you
go.
no longer have the fairness doctrine where one side can get on and the other side can get on where they owed equal time, which I think they should bring it back really because we have 2 sides to every story. But,
I
you know,
agree.
what do I know?
No, well,
I've just
I
been in the
wanted to
business
make
for
sure that the
48
audience.
years.
I wanted to make sure the audience got it right because I said it incorrectly. Go ahead, brother Jack.
Well, Jack says he doesn't have anything, so take it home, Egberto.
All right. Anyway, need to as far as Brian is concerned, Brian brought up something that Donald Trump allowed to happen and made it his own. I don't. Anyhow, folks, love you all my listeners, all my callers. Please keep listening. The rest of the show can be found at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. Against the recommendations of state and county election officials, 3 Trump loyalists serving on the Georgia state